All right, so we're back. I've finished sort of merging things together and blending things together. I didn't really do much to the feet and to the hands. Like the feet is that's still pretty messed up, to be honest. It's not that detailed at all, but I'm hoping the feet it's not going to be a major detail anyways. So I think it'll be fine. I'm going to leave some of these sort of marks in if they're sort of going to be shown in the render. I'll just fix it in post, really. I'm going to make this more of an illustrative piece, like I normally do, but you definitely want to fix this up if it's going to be for a final game character or something, because that will show. All these strokes and things like that will show. The hands aren't as detailed because I figured that I'm going to just do that in Substance Painter anyways. So I'm just going to, because they're going to be small light details. All I sort of did was smooth out the brush strokes. The more obvious ones anyways, right? And just kept the hands pretty clean. I'll do all those little sort of details in Substance Painter if I need to. And yeah, the rest I didn't really do much. You can sort of see the brush strokes on this still. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because you sort of don't see the back anyways. So I figured that it's probably not going to be too much of an issue if there's a little bit of brush stroking sort of left behind. But I can come into here and sort of just do a little bit, and paint over this as much as possible. In the after I've rendered everything out, and the mouth I didn't really do much, just tidied it up a bit. So you can sort of see the final, the differences. So here's the final, and here's the one before I made changes. So some slight changes. You can see it tick over to a new sort of shape. So very minimal changes, but just enough that I thought made it look a bit better. Great. All right, so let's get this ready for export. So when we're exporting out of Substance, we need to have, if we're going to do it out of ZBrush into Substance, we want to have sort of two versions. We want to have our high poly and our low poly. So I kind of have them here, this is when it was all separated into different pieces. So what I'm going to do is enable my low poly. I'm just going to hide everything in merge, and as well as this retopoed mesh. Right. And in high, I'm just going to hide everything as well. So now that I have this retopoed mesh, or this low poly version, what I'm going to do is just hide all of these separated pieces, because we don't need them, and I don't want them to be out like that. And I'm going to bring my retopo into that folder. So obviously my retopo is very high in detail. Just going to make sure everything is there. So just get out of... Yep. So the eyeballs are there, the fingernails and toenails. So this is the low poly. So I'm just going to go to my geometry subtab, subpalette, and bring that all the way to 1. So that's my low poly. And then I'm just going to I'll rename this. So I'm going to rename this retopo underscore low. Duplicate that, bring that to the high poly folder. And I'm just going to hide this folder, bring back the high poly, and the nails and toenails as well on the eyes. So with this body retopo, so where is it? It's over here. So I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to go to geometry and bring that all the way up to the highest subdiv level. So we have max detail. Okay, so we've got max detail here. Just double check that so you can sort of see. I have my low poly here still enabled. Right, so we got this folder that has our high poly, and this folder that has all our low poly items. So I'm just going to drag all of these guys into old because we don't really need them anymore. So the individual pieces. Great, and same with the other side as well, the high poly side. So any pieces that I don't need, I'm just going to chuck it in old, or just delete them if you wanted to. It's up to you. So merge, I'm just going to get rid of that whole folder. Okay. So we should have 4 things in each folder, which is the toenails, fingernails, eyeballs, and the body. So I'm going to rename this so it's nice and clean. So this will be body underscored retopo underscored high. And these guys are renamed as well. And what we want to do is make sure that the suffix is done properly. So we got underscored low, lowercase, and then the prefix, or not the prefix, but the name of each object is the same. So eyes, body retopo, fingernails or nail fingers, or lowercase, nail fingers, and then nail toes. Nail toe is the same. Alright, sorry about that. My computer crashed because I ran out of memory. All I had to do was just to delete some things from my quick save. But let's get back to it. So we just need to make sure that the naming convention is just makes sense. So we have body retopo low, nails, toe. So I'm just going to bring that down so it's the same. Nail fingers underscore low. I'm going to rename nail, put an S in there. Right, same with this. So rename, put an S. Great. So we have our low poly. So I'm just going to reduce this all the way down. And if we were making this for a film or animation, we wouldn't need to copy the subtool. We could just use the same. Well, at certain times we probably would copy it, but we would also use the same subtool to generate a displacement map and high quality normal map as well. Great, so we have these 2 versions, like that, all properly named and everything. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the low poly, and what I'm going to do is just go to Z plugins, FBX export, oops, and just make sure it's selected to visible. In the options, just turn anything off in here. We don't need anything. And then let's export this out. Great. So I'm gonna override these ones here. So full low. So you can name it whatever you want. It's fine. Great. Then I'm going to do the same thing except to the high poly. I'm going to go to Z plugins, export, should be all the same, so let's export this out. Then we we want this one high. So I'm just going to run Substance Painter in the background. This might take a bit of time for it to export. So just make sure you give it the time it needs. Shouldn't take that long though. Okay, so I have Substance Painter open. What I'm going to do is just test all of this out with just the auto read topology, and then I'll record a separate video for how I would do the UV unwrapping. So file, new, let's import that low poly guy. So it's full low, this one here. Just double check that's the right one. Yep. Okay, so just add that to make that 4K. We're not using UV tile set for this test, but for when we do the proper unwrap, we will be using this setting. So let's use the auto unwrap just for this process and just press OK. So I'm going to Alt Tab back to ZBrush just to see if it's going to be working. What I'm going to do is just press pause on my recording and then come back when that's done. Alright, welcome back. So that took quite some time to export. It did crash once, just because I pressed some buttons. But it exported, it took about half an hour or so. So just got to give it some time to export. Anyways, I've gone through into Substance Painter and I've done the initial bake, and this is the character at its fullest. So I've just chucked a smart material on just to see how it sort of looks. You can see that it looks fantastic. So the initial baking that I did didn't, it's wrong, but because the character is not complex with many different bits, it did come through okay. So you can see that it looks really good. Right. And remember, this is the low poly character. So we can sort of bring up the wireframes here. I think we're going to go back into the other mode, painting mode. But you can see it looks great. So if I go back to painting, you can see that all the everything has all the paint on it, which is really cool. Okay. If I bring up the wireframes here, you can see that it is just a low poly wireframe on top. You can see I had to do a little bit of a dodgy move here to stitch a higher poly head onto a low poly body. But yeah, it looks great. So all the details come through really nicely. So let's take a look at the bake details, the bake options here. So I'm just going to take that wireframe off and go back to the bake. So when you're importing your high poly, it can take a bit of time, especially if it's on the higher end of the high poly stuff. So I was importing something about 60 million. Right. So this is it here. Go through the general bake settings, make sure you change the output size. The reason why we exported it the way we did was because we wanted this texture set list. So you can see that we have the read topo body low, the eyes, the nails, and toenails. So we want to make sure that we bake this properly, because we got meshes that sort of occlude things. So the fingernails are occluding the nails mesh underneath, or the finger mesh underneath, as well as the face is occluding parts of the eyes. So the reason why we named it underscored low is because we want to use this setting here, this match setting. So change this to by mesh names. You can see that we can bake this across. So these names aren't renamed properly. So you can see nails toes with an S and nail toe. So unfortunately, I have to go back into ZBrush and rename this. But you can see everything else is named properly, and it's going to treat the baking process as if it's just going to match the names. So all the things that have been included is not going to be included anymore. So I'm going to go back to my paint and just show you why that's important, right? So especially if you have characters that have layers of clothing and things like that, this can be quite a big issue. So let's take a look at the eyes. So you can see on the eyes that the high poly is being baked onto the eyeballs. So if I go to my texture sets here and just hide the body, and I'm left with the eye, you can see that the eye was baked on, or the face was baked onto the eyeball, which is not what we want. The same thing if I go to the fingernails, you can see, whilst that's not a big issue, we just don't want that, right? Because that's not correct. Well, actually in this case we kind of do want that because you get this sort of shadow. But there are many instances where we don't want that to happen, like for example the eyes. So I'm going to go back to my bake, and everything's matching except for the toenails. So I'm just going to let it think again. The initial import does take a bit of time, but once you have that imported, it does speed up a bit if you go back to the baking. So now that we have this by mesh name, we can press bake selected and just let it run through. So this is going to take quite a bit of time to go through, especially if you have a very large character or a big character that has multiple texture sets. And this is when we do the unwrapping properly, we're going to have multiple UDIMs, so it's going to take especially long. So just give it some time to bake, and I'm just going to pause the video and I'll come back to it when it's done. Great, so I realized I had my mic muted at this point. So you're gonna see that there's just no audio. But all I did was just bake my model. That came through perfectly fine. There was a bit of delay because we're doing a multi-mesh bake. But it came through perfectly fine, except for the toenails, which had that issue. But that's all I wanted to go through. You can sort of watch what I did next, which was just look at the mesh just to make sure it worked. In the next video, we will unwrap everything in Rhizome, and we'll do it properly. And then we'll import it back into Substance to get it ready for texturing.